Dear listeners, before we get started, drop a quick hi in the comments and let us know where you're tuning in from. Also, if you have any suggestions for us to make the channel better, please let us know. Now let's start with the story. Well, here I am, Ronald James Jeremy. You probably know me as Ron Jeremy, hitman, part-time DJ. But most of you, you regular listeners of this channel who treat my show like your personal soap opera, know me as a divorce lawyer. A damn good one, too. I save men from their cheating wives like a priest saves souls. Only, I don't hand out rosaries. I hand out alimony-free futures. Now, I'm saying all this because of a comment I saw a few weeks back. 3boysmom 1137. If you're listening, and I know you are, you said I should break the fourth wall. Talk to you listeners directly. Pull back the curtain, stop narrating like I'm some gritty more voiceover, and just be real with you. So here I am. I've broken your precious fourth wall. No applause. No PayPal donation. Figures. At least be generous to hit that like button. Anyway, now that I've indulged that little request, let's get on with the damn story. But before I do, let me give you a little context, a slice of the life that made me who I am. My family. Let's just say I come from a long, blood-soaked line of patriotic overachievers. My grandfather, Christian James Jeremy, Korean War, 12th Ranger Infantry Company, the 28th Division. The man was a walking legend, Medal of Honor recipient. You know what that means? It means he saw hell, walked through it with a rifle, and left footprints behind. He used to sit me down as a kid and say, Ronnie, pain is temporary, but what you do under pressure, that's what defines you. Then there's my father, Harry James Jeremy, Vietnam, Company N, 75th Infantry Regiment. Same deal. Another damn Medal of Honor on the mantelpiece. I used to think those medals were just for show until I saw the photos, the ones he never meant for me to find. Jungle, firefights, blood, men screaming. My dad. Well, he never said much about it. But when the fireworks went off every 4th of July, he'd flinch hard enough to spill his beer. I carry their names, their legacy. I carry the pressure of their shadows every time I walk in a court or pick up a Glock with a scratched serial number. That kind of weight, it doesn't leave room for failure. My little sister, Riley, she was the only one in the family who ever smiled without a reason. Down syndrome. She never cared about war medals or legal victories. To her, I'm just Ronnie, the big brother who played her the Bee Gees when she's sad. She called me Sunshine Man. Go figure. All past tense. Well, you will find out. And my mother? Well, she was a certified bitch. She left us. Yeah, my mother, Judith and Jeremy, born in Nebraska, raised on free love and rebellion, walked out of our lives like we were nothing more than a bad idea she regretted the morning after. I was 5. Riley was barely 3 months old. Just a crying little bundle of warmth who didn't even know what a mother was before she was gone. You want to know why she left? Because my father, Harry James Jeremy, was a soldier in Vietnam. A goddamn hero. And my mother? She was an anti-war protester. Not the hold a sign and pray for peace kind. No, she was the kind screaming death to soldiers on the street corner. And when word came that Harry was finally coming home, she didn't even flinch. I remember it clear as a goddamn bell. Her standing on the porch with her duffel bag and this shaggy-looking guy with a guitar case, smelling like patchouli and weed, while Riley was screaming her lungs out in the crib. I said, "Where are you going, Mama?" And she just looked at me, this blank stare, like she didn't recognize me. Someplace better, Ronnie, where people aren't killers. She kissed me on the head, walked down those steps, and never turned around. Not once. Dad came back home 3 days later, still in his uniform, limping from a leg injury he never talked about. He walked through that front door expecting a wife and found an empty closet, a crying baby, and me standing there holding one of her scarves like it meant something. He didn't ask any questions, just picked up Riley, pressed his forehead to hers, and whispered, "It's just us now, baby girl." We never spoke of her again, not until years later when I found out the full story. Turns out she ran off with that hippie guitarist. They bounced around communes, dropped acid, shared needles, preached peace and love while the world fell apart around them. Eventually, she contracted AIDS, died alone of a heroin overdose in some squat house in Oregon. No funeral, no closure, just a coroner's note sent to a P.O. box my dad had closed years ago. After Mom left, it was just Dad and Grandpa James, 2 war heroes, one haunted and quiet, the other loud and stubborn, raising 2 kids in a world that didn't make room for broken families. Dad tried his best, but war had carved pieces out of him, left jagged holes where peace should have been. He died when I was 12. Heart failure, they said. I think it was something else, something quieter. Some wounds don't bleed. They just sit inside you, waiting. From then on, it was Grandpa James who raised us. The man was granite. Woke us up at 5 a.m. every morning. Taught me how to shave with a straight razor by the time I was 13. Taught Riley how to count her meds and tie her shoes. Never complained, never faltered. He said, "You get one life, Ronnie. One. You either let it break you, or you use it to sharpen your edge." So yeah, my mother? She left, and I've never once missed her. Growing up, I was a shy kid. Thin wrists, soft voice, always had my nose buried in a book or a sketch pad. Easy target. In the jungle that was public school, I was a wounded animal from day one. And the other kids? They smelled blood. It started small. A shove in the hallway, tripping me during gym. One time, Jimmy Kroll, a fat kid with a face like a chewed-up burger, poured chocolate milk into my backpack when I left it unattended in the cafeteria. Ruined every book I had. I didn't say a word. Just walked home, dripping milk and humiliation. Now, if you're thinking, why not tell the teacher? I did. Once. Mrs. Dandridge. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Maybe if you tried making more friends, Ron, these things wouldn't happen." I nodded. But in my head, I was already marking her down as someone who'd regret it someday. Thing is, I couldn't go home and tell Grandpa either. No way. That man didn't believe in weakness. I remember one day, I came home with a busted lip and gravel embedded in my palms. He just looked up from his paper and grunted, "Did you fight back?" I said no. He folded the paper slowly, set it down, and looked me dead in the eye. "Then I don't want to hear about it, Ronnie. You get hit, you hit harder. You go down, you get back up. You make him regret it. That's how men are made." But here's the thing. He never told me what to do when you're outnumbered 5-1. When you're cornered in the boys' locker room, and they strip you down to your underwear and lock your clothes in the janitor's closet. When they laugh and say, "Ron the dumb. Looks like his sister. Dumb like her too." That day broke something in me. After that, I stopped expecting justice. I stopped praying to the invisible powers of fairness. I stopped trying to be a good kid. And I got creative. See, if I couldn't beat them with fists, I'd destroy them with something sharper, consequences. It started with Timmy Rush. Blonde, tall, always the first to throw a punch when he had an audience. He'd stolen my lunch twice in 1 week and laughed about it like it was his birthright. So, I stole his brand new Game Boy from his locker. Easy enough, he never locked it. Then I slipped it into Matt Dalka's backpack during recess. Matt was a teacher's pet, always squeaky clean, straight-A snitch. The kind who told on you for chewing gum. When Timmy noticed it was missing, he started shouting. The teachers searched everyone's stuff. Found it in Matt's bag. Matt cried. Timmy screamed. They both got suspended. And I sat at the back of the class, smiling just slightly, like a cat with a full belly. Next came Amanda Firth. She used to call me Ronnie the Orphan because my mom was gone and my dad was buried. One time she passed around a fake note in class that said I peed the bed. Everyone laughed. Even the teacher chuckled. A week later, Amanda's book went missing. Same trick. I took it and planted it in Kayla Monroe's bag. Those two were best friends. Operative word were. They blamed each other. Screaming match in front of the principal. Friend group shattered. Amanda got her phone back eventually, but by then the damage was done. I didn't do this just once or twice. It became my thing. Quiet, invisible vengeance. Kids learned that if they messed with me, something bad would happen. Something they couldn't trace, couldn't predict. Rumors started. Some said I was cursed. Others thought I was into black magic. Me? I kept quiet. That's what scared them the most. And you know what? It worked. They stopped touching my stuff. They stopped tripping me. I was still alone, but now I was alone and untouchable. They didn't like me, but they feared me. And in a world like that, fear was better than love. In all the world, the only person I truly loved, unconditionally, without a hint of doubt, was my sister, Riley. No one else even came close. Riley was pure. There's no other word for her. She had this laugh that could melt steel and eyes that never judged. She never went to school, not like I did. We had a special teacher come in every day, Miss Lila, an old woman with big glasses and a voice like a music box. Grandpa made sure Riley had everything. The best care, the best attention, because we had money, old money, war hero pension, investments, land. But none of it ever felt like it belonged to me. Time passed. I got older, taller, though not by much, stronger, but never strong enough. And the gap between me and Grandpa, it just kept growing wider. He never liked me. Not really. I wasn't his ideal grandson. And truth be told, I didn't like me either back then. I'd look in the mirror and see disappointment. Disappointment in a hoodie. There was always a comparison hanging in the air like a noose. Harry, my father, the ghost with the Medal of Honor. He was an athlete. Grandpa used to say, sipping black coffee like it was war fuel. Could run a mile in under 6. Captain of the wrestling team. Shot put. Damn good with a rifle. Girls lined up for him. Hell, the army called him. Then he'd look at me. 5'6", slouched shoulders, skin too pale, hands too shaky, zero ambition, according to him. You're 16 now, he said once, his eyes squinting with that familiar disappointment. And what do you have to show for it? You read weird books. You don't play ball. Don't go out. What are you going to be, Ronnie? A librarian. I remember sitting across the table from him, clenching my jaw. You think I asked to be this? I shot back, voice low. You think I chose these genetics? Where's the customer support for that? Huh. He slammed his cup on the table. Don't talk to me about choices. You think life gave me a damn brochure? I fought in a war at 18, Ron. 18. What are you doing? Popping your pimples like a bitch. I stood up. My chair screeched across the floor. My chest was heaving. My face flushed red. I'm doing what I have to do to survive, I growled. And at least I'm not pretending I love being compared to a dead man. The silence that followed was nuclear. Then, Ronnie. It was Riley's voice. She stood in the doorway in her pajamas, purple ones with little yellow ducks on them. Her hair was a mess, and she rubbed one sleepy eye with the back of her hand. I heard yelling. I looked at her. Grandpa looked at her. Everything stopped. He stood, walked over, knelt beside her, smoothed her hair. Just me and your brother, Peanut, he said softly. Just a little talking too loud, okay? Riley nodded, yawning, and leaned her head against his chest. I walked over and wrapped my arms around both of them. None of us said anything for a long while. That was the only thing me and the old man ever had in common, our love for Riley. She was our ceasefire, our sanctuary. When she was around, the war paused, even just for a moment. Well, as they say, life goes on. Eventually, I graduated high school and went to law school. Not because I had some burning dream to defend the innocent or argue in court with righteous fire in my belly. No, I went because I had no damn clue what I wanted to do with my life, and Grandpa made the decision for me. I remember the conversation clear as a bell. We were sitting on the porch, he in his rocker, me on the steps, both sipping lemonade like we were pretending to be normal for once. He looked at me, squinted at the sky like it owed him something, and said, "You can't be a soldier. Not built for it." I didn't argue. I tried ROTC for a month. Ended up vomiting in the bush during a mock drill while the instructor laughed and said, "Private Jeremy, you couldn't charge a damn phone, let alone a hill." Grandpa continued, ticking off a list with his calloused fingers. Can't be a cop, no discipline. Can't be a doctor, you're crap at science. Fireman, you've got the lungs of a hamster. He took a sip. So be a lawyer. You're good with words. You're sly. That mind of yours, twisted, but sharp. Help people who need you, Ronnie. Be a damn lawyer and do something good with your life. I wanted to tell him I didn't even know what good meant anymore. That I still felt like that kid getting his face shoved in a urinal. That maybe helping people wasn't in my blood. But instead, I just said, yeah, okay. And that was it. So I applied, got in, thanks to decent grades, a solid essay about Riley, and probably Grandpa calling in some favors from his war buddies. And suddenly, I was in college. And let me tell you something, college? College was fun. It was like stepping into another universe. Gone were the bullies, the daily threats, the narrow stairs in the hallway. Nobody gave a damn who you were in high school. Nobody cared that you were awkward or quiet, or that you'd once cried in a gym locker room while hiding from a kid named Max who liked to punch people for fun. Here, people wanted to talk. Girls wanted attention. Guys didn't bully, they partied with you. But even in all that, I could feel it, that hum under the surface, like a dog sensing a quake before it hits. Everyone was wearing a mask. I could see it in the way they smiled, too wide. In how they talked, too smooth. Everyone was selling something, playing some angle, trying to get into bed, into power, into opportunity. The place reeked of ambition and cheap perfume. I wasn't special anymore. I was just another player in the game. So I did what any nerdy outcast suddenly dropped into a jungle of half-naked co-eds and keg parties would do. I played. I partied. Hard. I drank things I couldn't pronounce. I danced like an idiot. And yeah, I had sex. A lot more than I ever imagined I would. Girls with lip rings and fake names. Girls who cried after. Girls who didn't even remember my name the next morning. It wasn't love. It wasn't even connection. It was survival. And for once, I was winning. I studied, sure. Enough to keep afloat. Enough to keep Grandpa from asking questions when I came home for holidays with bloodshot eyes and an empty bottle of cologne. But most of all, I watched. I learned. I sharpened my instincts like a knife under warm water. Because college wasn't just where I studied law. It was where I started learning people. By the time I graduated, I was, how do I put this politely, an evil man with the smile of Skeletor. I don't mean that I killed people or set fire to orphanages. I wasn't that kind of evil. No, I was the kind that could sit across from you at a bar, buy you a drink, laugh at your jokes, and 10 minutes later have you signing over your car without knowing it. Manipulative, cold, calculated. I didn't just learn law. I learned leverage. I learned how people lie to themselves. And I learned how to exploit it. When I came back home, Riley was the first one to meet me at the door. She threw her arms around me like I'd come back from war. Ronnie, you're back. You came back for real this time, right? You're not leaving again. She was older now, still had that same bright, innocent face, but the baby fat had melted away a bit. Her eyes looked bigger, more aware, maybe even a little afraid. I knelt down in front of her, held both her hands, and said softly, Riley, I'm home for good. I promise. No more dorm rooms. No more roommates who play ukulele at 2 a.m. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. I'll always protect you. She beamed. God, that smile. For a second, all the poison in me melted. Grandpa wasn't the hugging type, but he gave me a gruff nod and said, She missed you. You got no idea how much. I nodded back. I missed her too, but beneath that warmth was cold truth. I needed a job, and no legal firm in town wanted me. Didn't matter that I had a degree. Didn't matter that I knew case law like the back of my hand. When I walked into those offices, they saw what they wanted to see. An unshaven guy with dark eyes, crooked smile, and a face that looked like it had been built for interrogation rooms, not conference calls. I wasn't marketable. Hell, I wasn't even presentable. So Grandpa pulled a string. Ronnie, he said one morning over toast and bitter coffee, I'm taking you to see Mr. James. Old war buddy. Attorney. Office near downtown. Might be slow as a sloth, but he's honest. That man's never conned a single client in his life. Helped more people than I can count. You'd be lucky to follow in his footsteps. I didn't argue. I needed the job. I just said, sure, I'll wear a tie. He gave me a look, and a smile that doesn't make people check their wallets. We got in his truck, a beat-up old Ford he refused to replace, and drove across town. It was a quiet ride for the most part. Then, halfway through, Grandpa spoke again. James, he's the kind of lawyer people trust. Not because he's flashy, because he listens, doesn't twist words, doesn't feed them garbage to look smart. I looked out the window, jaw tight. So I should lie less. He shook his head. You should lie better, Ronnie. Only when it counts. I actually laughed at that. What if I don't want to be like him? Then be better. Damn it, he said. You've got it in you. Somewhere under that haunted house grin and your go-doffel posture. I smirked. You're oddly optimistic for a man who once said I'd be lucky to make it as a mall cop. He grunted. Still stand by that. But even mall cops gotta start somewhere. We pulled up outside a brick building that looked like it'd collapse if someone sneezed hard enough. Painted sign out front. James and Associates, EST 1967. I remember thinking, if this guy's still practicing law, he's either a legend or a ghost. Grandpa killed the engine and looked at me. Don't screw this up, Ronnie. You may not be the man I wanted you to be, but you can still become a man you're proud of. I nodded. Not because I believed him, but because I needed a damn job. So, I started working for James Brian Anderson. God help me, the man was awful. Not in a cruel way, not abusive or mean or lazy. No, James was awful in the worst possible way for someone like me. He was honest. Painfully, nauseatingly, rigidly honest. Every morning, like a ritual, he'd shuffle into the office in his dusty gray suit that looked like it belonged in a thrift shop coffin, drop his leather briefcase with a wheeze, and start preaching like a moral pastor in a courtroom chapel. Ronald, he always used my full name, like I was his altar boy. A lawyer who lies to his client is worse than a criminal. And a client who lies to their lawyer is asking to lose. I used to stare at him, coffee in hand, half asleep, and think, this guy wouldn't last a week in the real world. The courtroom isn't Sunday school. Did I learn anything from him? Yeah. I learned how not to prepare for an argument. I learned that telling the truth with a shaky voice and zero edge gets you buried. I learned that sometimes being right isn't enough. You need to be ruthless, loud, and surgical. But then came the day that changed everything. James came into the office looking like he'd been steamrolled by a bus. Ronald, he said, gripping the doorframe. I'm not feeling well. I've got court at 11. You'll have to go in for me. I blinked. Wait, what kind of case? He coughed. Domestic violence. Woman claims her husband beat her. Cops didn't press charges. That it? He shook his head. The husband's a cop. The others closed ranks. It's a hearing about the investigation. I nodded slowly. You think we've got a shot? He looked at me with those tired, earnest eyes. Truth is on our side. I wanted to say, yeah, well, so is the police union. But instead I just said, I got it. I walked into that courtroom half expecting it to be a formality, a paper shuffle, and a stern word from the judge. What I found instead was a damn cover-up. The report was a joke. No photos, no medical records, no witness statements. Just a 2-paragraph write-up saying the injuries were unsubstantiated. Her left eye was swollen shut in the picture she gave me. Her ribs? Cracked. Her voice? Trembling. When she took the stand, she kept glancing at the door like she expected her husband to come in and drag her out by the hair. When it was my turn, I stood up and walked the court through the inconsistencies like I was carving meat. No photographs were taken at the scene. No statement from the neighbor who called 911. No record of follow-up questioning. The officer in charge of the report? Officer Charles Denton, the victim's own patrol partner. The judge leaned forward. The department did not assign an independent investigator, nor was the internal affairs unit involved. That, Your Honor, is not just negligence. That's malice. The courtroom was dead silent. I could feel it, the shift. The judge removed his glasses, tapped them against the bench, and spoke in a low voice that made the hair on my neck stand up. This is a miscarriage of justice. The court orders the case to be reinvestigated by an independent unit. Officers involved in the original investigation will be suspended pending review, and the DA's office is advised to file charges if misconduct is found. Bang of the gavel. Just like that, I'd won. And in the same breath, I'd made new enemies. Because when I left the courtroom, there were 2 off-duty cops in the hallway, arms crossed, looking at me like I'd just pissed on the precinct's front door. One of them muttered, "Big win, lawyer boy. Hope you don't need backup anytime soon." I smiled that signature Skeletor grin and said, "Lucky for me, I never call the cops," and walked right past them. It wasn't justice that got me high that day. It wasn't even the power of making the system blink. It was winning. Simple, cold, addictive. That moment the judge banged the gavel and the courtroom turned. That was the hit. That was the rush in my veins. Like blood after frostbite. I knew, right then and there, exactly what I wanted from life. I didn't want truth. I didn't want peace. I didn't want a statue built in my honor. I wanted to win. At any cost. James, to his credit, noticed the win, but not the obsession. He saw in me what he called fire. I was his workhorse now, the guy who could handle the tough stuff while he sat in his old chair, quoting ethics and sipping room temperature tea. "Ronald," he said one morning, dropping a fresh file on my desk, "this one's a mess. Drug charges. Young man, no priors. Caught with intent to distribute. Open and shut for the DA." I opened the file, skimmed the arrest report, and raised an eyebrow. "Intent to distribute?" I asked. "He had 3 grams of coke and no baggies." "That's weak." James sighed. "He also had a scale and a notebook with names and numbers. That'll play well with the jury. I don't think we can get this dropped." I leaned back in my chair. "Don't care about dropped. What's the offer?" 3 years minimum, 2 with a plea." I stared at the file, then looked at James. "I'm not taking a plea." James frowned. "Ronald, if we push this to trial and lose, he'll do 5. Maybe more." I smiled slowly. "Then we won't lose." He sighed, rubbed his temple. "Don't let ego cloud judgment. We're not here to win for ourselves." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I was already thinking 5 steps ahead. In court, I twisted the narrative. Not lied, not exactly. I just rebranded it. Instead of a dealer, I painted my client as a desperate addict trying to get clean. The scale? Used to measure doses, trying to control intake. The notebook? Names of sponsors and rehab leads. The cocaine? Relapse. The key moment came when I cross-examined the arresting officer. "You say he had the drugs in his backpack, correct?" "Yes." "And this backpack was, 15 feet from him when you arrived?" "Roughly, yes." "Not on his person?" "No. No prints on the bag." "None found, no." "Interesting. And you immediately assumed he was selling?" "Yes." "Did you drug test him?" "No." I turned to the jury, gave them that calm predator smile. No drug test. No prints. No real evidence this was anything more than a struggling man with a backpack in the wrong place. The judge didn't say much after that. The prosecution floundered, stuck on assumptions and stereotypes. Verdict, not guilty. Outside the courthouse, my client cried. He hugged me like I saved his life. James was waiting by the steps, holding his coat like he wasn't sure whether to shake my hand or slap me. "You bent the story," he said flatly. I corrected the narrative. I replied, lighting a cigarette. "You want to save people, James? You got to know how to sell them first." He didn't answer, just stared at me for a long time. But the next day, another case file appeared on my desk, and I knew he was done fighting it. He had his closer. More cases came, and I kept winning. Didn't matter what it was, domestic abuse, fraud, wrongful termination, drugs, property disputes. If it landed on my desk, I turned it into a win. Some cases were slam dunks. Others were moral puzzles that I solved with a crowbar. But when I did, again, and again, and again, James, he was happy, deliriously so. The office was bringing in more money than ever, and he didn't even have to lift a finger, just walk in, smile at clients, and let me do the killing in the courtroom. He'd clap me on the shoulder and say, "You're helping the good guys, Ronald. Don't let anyone tell you different." And I'd nod, smile, lie straight to his face. Because in truth, it stopped being about good or bad a long time ago. I helped clients. Whether they were saints or scum, if they paid, I played. As for my personal life, there wasn't one. I never dated. Never cared to. I'd had sex, too much of it during college to pretend like it meant anything anymore. I saw behind the curtain. People didn't want love. They wanted convenience, leverage, fantasy, comfort, loyalty. Please. That was just a placeholder until someone better came along. And then came her. Linda Tucker. The woman who turned my life upside down. It was a Thursday. I remember that clearly. Cloudy, humid. One of those days that makes your shirt stick to your back. I was halfway through a ham sandwich when my secretary buzzed me. "Mr. Jeremy, there's a walk-in. She doesn't have an appointment, but she insists it's urgent. Says her name is Linda Tucker." I glanced at the clock. "Send her in. I've got 20 minutes. She walked in wearing a light blue dress, heels that clicked with confidence, and a pair of sunglasses she didn't take off right away. Right behind her was a guy, early 30s, gym fit, button-down shirt 2 sizes too tight. Dark eyes. Latino. Looked like he'd break your nose if you made eye contact for too long. I motioned to the seats. "Have a seat, Mrs. Tucker." And friend. She sat down slowly. The man, Juan, I'd come to learn, sat close. Too close. A little possessive. Linda took off her glasses. Her eyes were red. Teary. "Thank you for seeing me," she said softly. My husband, Brian, he's abusive. Emotionally, physically. It's been going on for years." "Any kids?" I asked. "Yes, we have a son. Jerry," she whispered. "He's 8. Where is he now?" "With my sister. Out of town." I leaned back in my chair, folded my hands, and let the silence stretch just a little longer than comfortable. Then I spoke. "Okay, Linda, I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I need you to tell me the truth. No lies. No omissions. If you lie to me, I will find out, and when I do, I will walk out of that courtroom and leave you to fend for yourself. Understand?" She swallowed. "Yes." I looked at Juan. "You sleeping with him?" Silence. Linda looked away. Juan stiffened. "Yeah," I said quietly. "That's what I thought." Juan opened his mouth, probably to defend her or puff his chest, but I held up a hand. "Don't bother. I'm not judging either of you. Not my job. But if you want me to take this case, you're going to be very clear with me, Linda. I need the truth. Not what you think will make you look good." Linda's lips trembled. "I didn't mean for it to happen." "You never do," I said coldly. "So, tell me now, what do you want? Divorce? Full custody? Spousal support?" She looked up at me. "I want out. I want my kids' custody. And I want Brian's money." I stared at her for a long moment. Then I smiled. Good. Now we're speaking the same language. What she didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that this case would not only become the messiest I'd ever handle. It would become personal. And it would burn everything I thought I controlled. Here's the thing they never teach you in law school. Evil doesn't knock. It just walks right in and sits on your couch. And that's exactly what Juan Sanchez did. Turns out, the guy wasn't just some jealous boyfriend clinging to a housewife in crisis. He was Mexican cartel. Hardcore. Ruthless. Killer. The kind of man who didn't blink when he slit throats. The kind of guy who didn't have enemies, only corpses. I found out by accident. One of my guys, off-duty cop who owed me favors, called me one night while I was sipping whiskey on my porch. "Ron," he said, low and quick. "You know that guy who keeps showing up to your office with your client? Juan Sanchez?" "Yeah." "He's flagged. Cartel ties. Been under DEA radar for years. His name's been in more sealed files than the mayor's mistress." I didn't say anything at first. I just stared into the dark street, ice melting in my glass. "So why hasn't he just killed Brian?" I finally asked. The answer made my stomach twist. "He has, just not the way you think." Turns out Brian Tucker wasn't stupid. He was patient, precise, a good guy in the truest sense, an accountant and a damn devoted father. He'd been documenting everything. Linda's cheating, Juan's presence around the kid, emotional distress. Photos, audio recordings, even a timeline of all the times he knew Juan had slept with his wife while he was in the next room. Yeah, you read that right. Juan didn't kill Brian. He tortured him. Psychologically. Made him watch his wife getting screwed. And Brian? He didn't explode. He didn't pull a gun. He just watched. Collected. Waited. He was going to make his move. His plan? File first. Win full custody. And disappear with his son. Fresh start. Somewhere safe. But he made one mistake. He waited too long. I had done some digging of my own. Quietly. Discreetly. Called in that one PI Tom. There's only one worth a damn in our town. Bald, cheap suits, and knows more about everyone's sins than their priests. I paid him double what Brian had slipped him. I said, I don't want your report, Tom. I want Brian's. Everything he's planning. Everything he knows. And I want it before he uses it. Tom whistled. You're dirty, Ron. I smirked. No, I'm thorough. 3 days later, he handed me a folder thick enough to choke a bear. Because I had his whole playbook before he even picked up the ball. I filed first. Had Brian served like a criminal in front of his coworkers. Then, I petitioned for a temporary restraining order. Cited emotional danger to the child, known violent outbursts, and, thanks to a conveniently vague incident at the school, potential psychological instability. Was it a stretch? Sure. But the judge signed it. Brian couldn't even say goodbye to his own son. Linda was thrilled. She cried in my office and said, I don't know how you did it. I smiled and said, because you pay me to win. That's how. But 3 days before the hearing, the whole damn table flipped. One was arrested. Drug trafficking and assault. On Brian. Word is, Brian was at his son's school, and Juan showed up, uninvited. There was an argument. Something snapped. Juan broke Brian's nose. 2 officers witnessed it, and the DEA had already been building a case. Now he was locked up, facing federal charges. Linda? She came into my office, pale, shaking. She was wearing that same blue dress again, ironic. She sat across from me and said, What now? I took a long sip of coffee, then leaned forward. Now? Now we go to war. Because I knew Brian wasn't done. And neither was I. I got one out on bail. Money talked. Always did. And this time, it screamed loud enough to make the charges fade into static. Turns out, the DEA wasn't interested in a mid-tier cartel runner who hadn't spilled blood in front of a senator. They were busy dealing with some other nightmare. Some woman in a border town down in Texas who was taking out entire drug networks like it was personal. And that's when I heard his name for the first time. Santiago Meza Lopez. The suit maker. Didn't know much back then. Just whispers. A ghost. A cleaner. A myth. Never thought I'd meet him. Let alone run from him. Let alone pray to live another day because I pissed off the wrong people. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Back to the courtroom. Linda won, of course. Of course she did. The whole damn thing had flipped in our favor. Juan and Brian's schoolyard brawl? That was a gift from the gods of drama. The second I got wind of it, I started reworking the narrative. Brian wasn't just hurt. He was violent. Unstable. Dangerous. And me? I sold it like a priest sells forgiveness. When the day came for Brian to take the stand, I was ready. Dressed like the devil in a tailored suit. Linda sat behind me, tissues in hand, eyes fake puffy but believable enough for a judge to frown. Brian took the stand in a blue button-down shirt. His nose still slightly crooked from Juan's punch. His eyes? Tired. Red. Full of fury he was barely holding back. I stood up and approached. Mr. Tucker. I began with that slow, calm voice I reserve for blood sport. How long have you suspected your wife was getting her unfulfilled desires taken care of by another man? He stiffened. Objection, his lawyer muttered. Sustained, the judge said. I nodded. Took a step back. Changed the angle. Mr. Tucker, when you saw Mr. Sanchez at the school, what did you feel? Brian shifted in his seat. It wasn't about me. I was worried about Jerry. That man shouldn't have been near him. Of course, I said with a nod, folding my hands like I was cradling empathy. You were protecting your son. Admirable. Every father says that. At least, until their fists start flying. Brian stared at me. Jaw tight. Muscles tensed beneath that cheap blue shirt. He probably ironed himself before trying to prove to the world he was still the good guy. I began circling him, slow, deliberate, like a predator with time on its side. So when you confronted Mr. Sanchez, you remained calm? Yes. Didn't raise your voice? No. Didn't threaten him? No. Didn't throw the first punch? No. I nodded, lips twitching like I almost believed him. Your Honor, I said, addressing the bench without taking my eyes off Brian. We've submitted bodycam footage from Officer Kearns. In that footage, Mr. Tucker can clearly be heard yelling, and I quote, "Get away from my son, or I'll bury you." His lawyer immediately shot up. Objection. Context matters. Overruled. The judge muttered, barely looking up. I leaned in closer to Brian now. Close enough for him to smell the subtle cologne I wore for these kinds of kill shots. Mr. Tucker, do you deny saying those words? Brian's nostrils flared. No. I said it. Would you consider that a threat? I was angry, he spat. Any father would be. Exactly. I said, with mock sympathy. You were angry. So angry you lost control. I didn't lose control, he snapped. I tilted my head. You're sure? Because the medical report shows a fractured cheekbone, 2 broken ribs, and a lacerated eyebrow on Mr. Sanchez. That was self-defense. Yet he had no weapon. No history of violence. Just a mouth and a face you clearly didn't like. I stepped in closer, dropped my voice. And that was enough, wasn't it? I didn't attack him, Brian barked. He hit me first. But you were ready, weren't you? I said, quiet, firm. You didn't back away. You didn't call security. You didn't think of your son. You thought of vengeance. I was protecting Jerry. Brian's voice cracked, louder now. I had to. I slammed a hand on the witness stand. From what? A man standing outside the school, talking to your ex-wife? Or was it the fact that your pride couldn't handle seeing the man she replaced you with? Brian turned red. The judge raised a brow, and his lawyer muttered something under his breath, but I didn't care. I walked closer, lowering my voice so only Brian and the first row could hear. If Sanchez hadn't thrown the first punch, would you still have fought him? Brian looked at me, at Linda behind me, at his son, visible through the glass in the hallway, quietly coloring in a book. Then he looked back at me, and something broke behind those tired eyes. His hands clenched the edge of the stand. His voice, low and full of thunder, came out like a confession under torture. I wanted to kill him. The silence that followed was suffocating. Even the judge's pen stopped mid-scratch. Even Linda's staged sniffles paused. Even I stood still, for effect, of course. Then I blinked, stepped back slowly, hands open like I'd just uncovered buried gold. No further questions, Your Honor. I didn't need to turn around to know the damage was done. Brian Tucker had just buried himself, and I handed him the shovel. From there, everything tumbled like dominoes. Full custody to Linda, spousal support, child support, a good chunk of Brian's pension, assets, and retirement. Brian didn't just lose his marriage. He lost his son. He had to say goodbye to the one thing he still believed he was good at, being a father. I didn't smile when the judge read the verdict. I didn't have to, because I got paid. Big time. Linda wrote the check with shaky hands, said, "Thank you, Ron," like she meant it. I took it, nodded, and walked out of that courtroom like a goddamn king. But deep inside, I knew I'd just made another enemy. And this one didn't cry. He waited. But what happened after the case? That was nothing short of a nightmare. A real, crawling, bile-in-the-throat kind of nightmare that doesn't wake up when the alarm rings. Brian Tucker, accountant, father, killed himself. Hung himself in the garage. A chair kicked over under his boots and a note pinned to his chest like some grim medal of truth. 3 pages. Blaming the system, the courts, the law, and me. Indirectly, of course. He never said Ron Jeremy by name. But he didn't need to. He said, her lawyer who made winning look like justice. That was enough. He wrote in chilling detail about how his wife had been cheating with Juan for months. That he knew. That he watched. That he waited. That every night he kissed his son goodnight, and then sat in silence, hearing his wife moan for another man in the room across the hall. And then, the final paragraph. He attached USB drives to the letter. Security footage. From his own cameras. Clear, brutal, inarguable video of Linda and Juan in bed, multiple times. Her laughing. Him slapping her butt. Her whispering, "He's so pathetic. I think he still believes I love him." Worst of all, he had sent the copy to a few media houses. That was the soundbite the news loved most. Ran it through every station. Every channel. The scandal exploded. Social media caught fire. Justice for Brian started trending. Petitions launched. Candlelight vigils. Talk shows. But you know what? In all that chaos, all that scandal, all that media-feeding frenzy, lawyers don't bleed. We walk through fire wearing polished shoes and invisible armor. The clients crumble. The public rages. The world cries foul. But me? I showed up the next morning, drank my coffee, and reviewed my next client's file. It's a cruel immunity. A perk of the profession. But I didn't feel untouchable when I got home that night. My grandfather was waiting on the porch, still in his pressed shirt, still standing like a damn general. He didn't yell, didn't throw things, didn't raise a hand. He just looked at me with the kind of silence that weighs more than a casket. "Did you see the news?" he asked. I didn't answer. He took a deep breath, jaw trembling, but not from age, from disappointment. "Are you proud of what you did, Ronnie?" he asked quietly. "You won, just like you wanted. Now there's an 8-year-old boy without a father. And all of it, was avoidable." I shrugged off my coat, tossed it on the chair beside the door. I started with my lies. She lied, Grandpa. She manipulated everyone, including me. The guy was already broken when he came into court. I just did my job. He stepped forward. "No, you didn't. Your job is to defend the law, not twist it until it fits your damn ambition." I smiled without humor. "You sound like James. I raised you, Ronnie. Watched you grow up with your fists clenched and your soul closed off. But I still believed. Maybe you'd become more than what the world gave you." He paused, then said it. The blow I didn't see coming. "You're out of the will." That stung. Not for the money. I didn't give a damn about the money. It was the finality in his voice. Like he'd just buried me next to the rest of the fallen heroes in his mind. He turned to go inside, but then stopped and looked over his shoulder. "I'm not throwing you out. Only because of Riley. She loves you. You're the only person she trusts. But don't mistake her kindness for forgiveness. Someday, she'll see what you are. And then he left me there, standing in the dark, alone, not out of the house, but exiled all the same. I didn't say a word back. What was the point? He thought he was punishing me, taking me out of the will. Good, because I was going to make 10 times more than whatever he had to leave. And I was going to do it the only way I knew how. Winning. At any cost. A day later, the kind of news came that doesn't hit you like a slap. It seeps in, slow, cold, and dirty. Jerry Tucker, 8 years old. He tried to take his own life. Tried to hang himself with his Spider-Man bedsheet. His grandmother found him. Pulse was still there. Barely. He was in a coma. The note they found on his pillow? I'm coming, Daddy. That shattered something in me. Something I didn't even know could still break. It wasn't a bullet. It wasn't a fist fight. It was a child giving up on the world I helped destroy. I sat at my desk that morning, staring blankly at a blank legal pad. Couldn't even remember what the next case was about. And then James called me in. His office was quiet. Neat. Smelled like dust and regret. He didn't even look mad. He looked tired. He closed the door, sat down, folded his old, veiny hands together, and looked at me like I was something he didn't know anymore. Ron, he said softly, you've brought in more money in the last 6 months than this firm's seen in 5 years. I raised an eyebrow. Wasn't aware success came with a hearing. He didn't smile, didn't blink. But I can't have blood money in my pocket, he said. I froze, just for a moment, then leaned back slowly in the chair. So that's it. I said, you're firing me. He didn't nod, didn't speak for a second, just kept his eyes on mine. I'm asking you to resign. Go home. Find your footing again. Why? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Because that boy, his voice cracked. That boy didn't just lose a father. He lost hope. And somewhere along the line, we stopped fighting for the right things. I didn't argue, didn't lash out. I stood up, straightened my jacket, and I walked out of that office with my head high. Part of me was relieved. No more dragging myself in James' shadow. But another part of me, one I couldn't silence that night, was drowning. Not for me, not for the job, but for Jerry. That kid, that poor, broken boy who did what grown men couldn't do, break away. That night, I came home later than usual. Riley was waiting on the couch, wrapped in her favorite purple blanket, the one with the cartoon owls. Her legs tucked under her, eyes glued to the news. She turned when she saw me. Her voice was soft, innocent. Ronnie, that kid tried to hurt himself. I stopped mid-step. She looked up at me, her eyes too clear, too honest. Did you break their family? I sighed, walked over, sat down next to her. No, I said. I didn't break their family. It was already broken. I was just the lawyer. I just did my job. Riley tilted her head. But your job is to help people. That's what Grandpa said. You said you help people. I couldn't meet her eyes. I helped Linda. I won her case. I did what I was paid to do. She looked confused. Hurt. Did you fight for the truth? I flinched. She leaned closer. Her voice almost a whisper. Did you protect the weak, Ronnie? Like you always said you would. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Not a single word. So I stood up, ran a hand through my hair, and said the only thing I could. We'll talk tomorrow, Riles. And then I walked to my room, closed the door, and stared at the ceiling. But I didn't sleep. Not that night. Not for many after. Starting over wasn't as dramatic as the movies make it seem. There was no thunderstorm, no rain-soaked trench coat, no moment of epiphany with violins in the background. Just a rented 2-room office above a pawn shop and a cheap nameplate that read, Ronald J. Jeremy, ESQ. Family and criminal law. Confidentiality guaranteed. No walk-ins. No waiting room chatter. Just me, my worn-out desk, and silence. I'd left James' firm without a shred of goodwill. No referrals, no letters, nothing but a bitter old man's sigh as I shut the door behind me. And in that quiet came the knock. I didn't even look up when I said, come in. But I knew that damn cologne. Juan Sanchez. And right behind him, Linda Tucker. Same broken voice, same painted sadness. But her eyes had changed. Less guilt, more calculation. One didn't waste time. You busy, counselor? He said with that same fake grin. Got a few legal headaches I'd like you to massage. He threw a thick folder on my desk. Drug charges, racketeering, illegal weapons possession, things you don't get charged with unless someone important finally gets tired of your face. I looked at it, then at him, then at Linda. She wouldn't meet my gaze. Just stood by the window, arms crossed like she was protecting herself from something invisible. I had no clients, no money, new office, new bills, old shadows. So I said what I'd always said. What's the budget? Juan grinned. For you, I have my checkbook open. I took the case. Of course I did. Let's not pretend I'm anything but consistent. Weeks later, I ended up at their house for some document signatures. Linda opened the door, hair messy, dark circles under her eyes, like she hadn't slept in a week. He's in the back, she said. You can set the papers on the kitchen table. The house was big. I lost my way and ended in front of a room. Jerry's room. And that's when I saw him. Jerry, bedridden, still, quiet, watching TV with the volume muted. I hadn't seen the kid since the trial. Since everything. His neck was held upright by a brace. Arms limp. Tubes coming from under his shirt. A breathing aid beside him. But it was his eyes that froze me. Still blue. Still bright. But sharper now. Eyes that could cut through glass. I walked toward him, slowly. Sat on the edge of the bed. Leaned down so he could see me clearly. He whispered. I barely heard it. I had to lean in. Cheek almost brushing his mouth. Are you the same lawyer who fought my dad? I froze. A second. Then nodded. Yeah, that was me. He closed his eyes. Whispered again. I hate you. I didn't say anything. Just sat back. Let that word hate crawl inside me like a parasite. It doesn't hurt the way you'd expect. Getting hated by a bedridden child isn't a sharp pain. It's a slow, shameful infection. Something you pretend you don't feel so you can sleep. But you do feel it. Every night. I stood up. Just as I turned to leave the room, I heard footsteps. Juan, buttoning his shirt, gold chain swinging like it had rights. He looked at me, then at Jerry. Did the kid say something to upset you? He asked casually. I'll teach him a lesson. No one messes with my lawyer. He took a step forward, eyes dark, voice too light. The kind of voice people use when they've already decided to do something violent. I stepped between them, flat hand out. Calm. No, I said quickly. He was just curious about my name. That's all. One raised an eyebrow, smiled. Kid's got balls for a vegetable. I didn't laugh. Didn't even blink. Documents are on the table. Let's get that done. He walked off. I turned back once. Jerry hadn't moved. But those eyes. Still watching me. Still hating me. Saying all the things his mouth couldn't anymore. Later that night, I called the nurse. Private care Linda paid for with the money she bled out of Brian's estate. The nurse was blunt. Juan hates the kid. Thinks he's in the way. I've had to step in before. Once, when Jerry said he hated him, Juan tried to yank the feeding tube. Linda stopped him. Barely. I didn't say anything for a while. Just listened to the silence on the other end of the line. Then I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the wall for a long, long time. And every night since then, every single night, I tell myself the same thing before bed. I did not cause any harm to the kid. I had a job to do. That's it. Nothing more. It's a mantra, a shield, a lie I hold like a rosary. Because if I let myself feel anything else, I won't sleep. And if I don't sleep, I start thinking. And thinking, that's when the guilt shows up. That evening still lives in my head like a cancer. Not a memory, no, a scar with its own heartbeat. It started off so normal. I was home, shirt half unbuttoned, heat turned up just enough, scribbling notes on a gun-running case one had dragged me into. My phone buzzed. Juan, I'm 5 minutes out. Got the file. Thought I'd save you the drive. I replied, cool. Just drop it at the door. But when he showed up, I made a mistake. I opened the door. I let him in. Just for a coffee. Just for 5 damn minutes. Make yourself at home, I said, already regretting the words. He stepped in like he owned the place. Silk shirt and gold chain. Looking around like he was sizing up something he might buy. Nice crib, he said, eyeing the bookshelves. Didn't expect the war dog to live in such a tidy kennel. I grunted and headed to the kitchen. You want coffee or not? Sure. You got that Cuban shit. I got supermarket brand espresso. He laughed. That'll do. I'm not picky. I poured him a cup, handed it over. He leaned on the counter, sipping like he was in a goddamn cafe in Rome. That's when I heard the soft shuffle of socks down the hallway. I turned. Too late, and there she was. Riley, now 18, wearing her favorite hoodie, hair in a ponytail, barefoot, eyes bright the way only hers could be. Ronnie, she said with that soft cheer in her voice. Who's this? I tensed. My body moved before my brain caught up. Riles, go back to your room, I said quickly. Just work stuff? But she didn't listen. Never did when she thought I was being rude. She stepped forward, smiled sweetly, extended her hand. One smiled back, too widely, like he already saw something he wanted. He took her hand in his. Held it. Just a second too long. Juan, he said, voice like honey and rust. Friend of your brother. I am his sister, Riley replied. She giggled. He talks about me? Only good things, Juan said, not taking his eyes off her. You're even prettier than I imagined. That was it. That was the moment. Riley smiled politely and excused herself. Walked back to her room, door clicking shut behind her. I waited. Just stood there, coffee growing cold in my hand. Then Juan said it, casually, like he was talking about the weather. She's got good genes, hermano. You keeping her locked up in this house forever. I turned to him, my voice low, controlled. She's my sister. He raised an eyebrow. And I'm just saying, beautiful girl. That's all. Chill, Ron. You think I'm some animal? I stepped closer, real slow. My tone was ice. You're not just some animal, Gabe. You're the type that likes sniffing around cages. You ever say anything about Riley again? Anything, and I'll bury you so deep your boys will need a drilling license to find your corpse. Are we clear? For a beat, he didn't say anything. Just stared at me. Then he grinned. You got it, brother. Crystal. He laughed as he laughed. Like I'd just told a joke. Like I wasn't serious. I locked the door behind him, then locked the second bolt. I stood there, breathing heavy, and for the first time in years, I felt afraid. Not for me. Not for my career. For Riley. Then the next day was really eventful. I was halfway through a glass of bourbon and sorting out a child custody dispute that made a sewer smell like spring air. It was Tom who called me. When he speaks in full sentences, it means someone's bleeding or about to. He didn't even wait for pleasantries. Ron, he said, voice flat. One screwed up. Royally. My stomach dropped a degree. What kind of screwed up? Poked the wrong bear in Mexico. Thought he could run a few hits on the DeKenna outfit. He figured they'd fold. I leaned forward. You're talking about Gabriel DeKenna? The same. I didn't say anything for a second. Just stared at the blackened ice cubes floating in my glass. My voice dropped. One hit his people. 2 crews. 1 dead, 1 limping. Rumor is, he thought DeKenna was all smoke. What he didn't realize is, DeKenna isn't just a cartel boss. He's a damn institution. Guys connected to half the army and the other half scared shitless of him. I stood up and walked to the window. Curtains drawn. Always drawn lately. And now, Tom exhaled. DeKenna's not just pissed. He's surgical. Everyone tied to Juan's operation is on his list. His mules, his soldiers, his lawyers. A cold wind seemed to pass through the room that had no windows open. I gripped the edge of the table. You're telling me I'm on a hit list because he couldn't read a power structure? Yes. Jesus Christ. Tom paused. You need to get out, Ron. I am serious. I ended the call and immediately dialed Juan. Didn't care that it was 2 a.m. Didn't care if he was asleep, drunk, or halfway through some deal with the devil. I was done being diplomatic. He picked up after 2 rings. Brother, he said, smooth as ever. You miss me already? You think this is a joke? I snapped. I just got off the phone with Tom. He says Gabriel DeKenna is coming for blood. Juan actually chuckled. Like I told him someone spilled a drink at a party. I know. I heard. Don't worry, hermano. I've got it handled. Handled. I hissed. You pissed on a bonfire and think it'll go out? You made a move on a man who owns half of Baja and buries the other half. What the hell does handle mean to you? I mean, he said, and his tone shifted, cold, resolute, confident. If Gabriel DeKenna shows up, I'll kill him. I froze. You'll what? I'll put him in the ground, Juan said, no hesitation. If he thinks he can walk into my territory, start waving threats around like he's God, he's mistaken. Juan, I said, slowly, like I was trying to talk a drunk off a ledge. This isn't some local enforcer we're talking about. This is DeKenna. He doesn't show up unless he's already bought the judge, burned the file, and bribed the coroner to forget your name. You don't kill DeKenna. You survive him. You don't know what I've got in play, Juan snapped. You don't know what I'm holding. I know you're dragging me into it. He was quiet for a second. Then his voice softened just slightly. I'm coming down there. I gritted my teeth. What? I'm coming to see you. In person. We'll talk, face to face. I know this mess touched more people than it should have. That's on me. I'm going to fix it. The way he said it, like a man giving his own eulogy. Like someone who'd already decided what version of himself wouldn't survive. When? I asked. Tomorrow night, he said. Don't worry, brother. We'll sort this out. You'll see. Juan, listen to me. I said, low and firm. Don't do anything reckless. Don't bring heat to my door. I've a sister to protect. He paused. Just long enough to twist the silence into a noose. Relax, Ronnie, he said, voice calm again. You've always had my back. Now I've got yours. Then he hung up, and all I could hear was the dial tone, and the sound of a war I didn't want to be part of, already starting to march toward my door that I stared at the screen for a long time after. It wasn't trust that kept me from sleeping that night. It was the gnawing suspicion that Juan was walking into my life one last time, and bringing hell with him. I met Juan at a quiet little bar off 8th and Layton, the kind of place with 1 bartender, 2 neon signs, and 3 working cameras. I didn't sit long. He came in like he owned the city, sunglasses indoors, that casual swagger that only men with too many guns or too many bodies behind them could pull off. Ronnie, he said with that crooked grin, looking like a priest at a funeral. What's wrong? I didn't waste time. I'm out, Juan. He raised an eyebrow, slid into the booth across from me. Out. I nodded, voice low. I've got Riley to take care of. My sister. She's everything I have. And this heat you've brought. This isn't something I can shield her from. So I need you to find another lawyer. Someone who doesn't have a family to bury. He stared at me for a moment, smile slowly fading. Then he leaned back, tilted his head. So that's it, huh? He said. Family. I didn't respond. He clicked his tongue. You know what, Hermano? That's sweet. Noble. Poetic even. He stood, adjusted his coat. So you have to take care of your sister. I nodded again, unsure if I should feel relieved or terrified. Juan smiled. Not with his mouth, with his eyes. Cold. Empty. Calculating. Noted. And then he left. I didn't wait. I ran. Didn't care who saw me speeding. Didn't care about red lights or angry horns. The only thought pounding in my head was Riley. 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 I got home in 12 minutes flat. Busted the front door open. And time stopped. My grandfather, Christian James Jeremy, was sprawled out across the living room floor. Blood pooled under him. 2 dark circles blooming on his chest like the end of a slow nightmare. He looked up at me. Still alive. Barely. I dropped to my knees. My hands immediately went to his wounds, pressing hard, uselessly. Riley, I choked out. Where's Riley? His lips trembled. A fresh line of blood ran from the corner of his mouth. Gone, they took her. Who? His hand gripped mine. Tight, tighter than I thought a dying man could. You brought this, he rasped. This shame on us. You, and your hunger. Your wins. You think we earned those medals for this? For you? Don't do this now, I said. Save your breath. She's innocent, his eyes fluttered. And you put her in hell. Please, Grandpa. Please hold on. His breathing rattled. Then, with a final, shallow breath, he said it. She called out for you, Ronnie. Where were you? And then he went still. Just like that. Gone. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't punch walls or tear my hair. I called the cops. Took them 22 minutes to arrive. 2 squad cars. 1 detective. For uniforms who clearly knew who I was. They didn't even look surprised when they saw the body. One of them, Sergeant Booker, I think, whistled low as they roped off the room. Jeremy, he muttered. Finally caught up to you, huh? I said nothing. I sat on the floor, blood on my hands, staring at the spot where my grandfather died. Another officer leaned in. A younger guy with a smug look. You always figured the system wouldn't touch you, he said. Guess the streets found a faster way. Shut up, Davis, the detective barked. Where's the girl? I looked up. Her name's Riley. She's got Down syndrome. She's 18. They took her. We'll put out the bolo, he said. I grabbed his sleeve. You need to find her. She doesn't deserve this. She's never hurt anyone. The detective looked at me with something between sympathy and contempt. You've spent years twisting the law for gangsters, thugs, cartel rats. You think they care about innocence? I let go of his sleeve. Nodded. Yeah, I muttered. I know. I stayed right there. Blood drying on my shirt. Back against the wall. Head in my hands. Trying to breathe through the crushing weight of every decision that led here. For once, winning meant nothing. For once, there was no case to argue. No loophole to climb through. Just me. And the silence where Riley's voice used to be. I thought the worst had passed. The cops had taken the body. The bloodstains were still drying in the carpet. The silence in the house felt like a punishment. But the devil doesn't knock. He sends men first. I heard the front door creak open, even though I had locked it. 2 seconds later, they were on me. Black boots, black gloves, no words. Just fists and kicks. Cold. Precise. Not a beating to kill me, a message. My ribs cracked. My vision blurred. I tasted copper. I barely got a breath in when a new set of footsteps echoed down the hall. Slow, methodical, confident. Santiago Meza Lopez. No introduction needed. He wasn't the type of man who entered a room. He claimed it. He stopped in front of me, looked down, and laughed. A low, dry chuckle that made my blood run cold. Look at you, he said. The lawyer. The fixer. The man who made murder look like miscommunication. He squatted in front of me, face just inches from mine. His breath smelled like peppermint and death. You got your hands real dirty, Ronnie, he whispered. A dead husband, Brian Tucker. A crippled kid, little Jerry. Dead war hero, and now, a missing sister. Your hands are dirty, Ron. He leaned in closer. Tell me, does justice still feel good now? I just want my sister back. I spat out more blood than words. It was Juan, I spat. He said he was coming over. I told him I was out. I told him I had Riley to protect. He smiled. Then hours later, she's gone. Lopez stood slowly, pacing a little. He wasn't smiling now. Juan's ego finally got him there, he muttered. Kid always thought the game revolved around him. Now he's bargaining with lives. He turned back to me. You want her back? I nodded again. Good, Lopez said. Then listen. He walked to the nearest chair and sat, like this was a business meeting. His men didn't move. One of them lit a cigarette. Lopez crossed his legs. I'm going to let you live, Ron. You know why? I didn't answer. He leaned forward. Because killing you would be a waste of talent. He stood, drew his gun from his coat, and casually pointed it at my head. You're going to work for Gabriel DeKinna now. My breath caught. Lopez smiled. Yes, that Gabriel. The one tried to screw over. The one who's owed a pound of flesh for every body once stacked up. He clicked off the safety. You're smart. You know law. You know people. And most importantly, you want to win. That makes you valuable. I stared at him, vision wobbling. You want me to what? Be his lawyer? No, he said. I want you to be his weapon. Clean the dirt. Protect his assets. Cut the rot from the inside, before the law even smells it. You do that, and we find your sister. You don't. He raised the gun higher. I count to 10. You say yes before that. We talk. You wait past 10. I put a bullet through your skull and toss your body on Juan's front porch. He looked down at his gold watch, tapped the face once, then started counting. 10. The barrel felt heavier with every second. 9. I thought of Riley. Her laugh. Her warmth. 8. 1. That bastard. He'd used her to punish me for walking away. 7. Lopez cocked the hammer. 6. I could feel the sweat run down my temple. 5. A breath. 4. Time slowed. 3. Yes. My voice was hoarse, shaky, but I said it. Lopez stopped, smiled. He holstered the weapon like he never intended to fire it. He walked back toward the door. Good choice, Ronnie, he said. You made the right enemy. He paused before stepping out. Welcome to the other side of justice. Then they were gone, and I was left there, broken, bleeding, and now bound to the devil's boss. But I had a direction, and that was more than I had an hour ago. Riley, I'm coming. And God help whoever stands in my way. The street outside my house had barely gone quiet when I heard the deep, gravelly hum of engines. 3 black SUVs, bulletproof and tinted so dark they looked like shadows on wheels. They pulled up like a funeral procession for the damned. Doors opened in sync, and a dozen men spilled out, armed, masked, dressed in black from neck to boot. Not cops, not thugs, professionals, the kind that only show up when all other options have run out. Then one man stepped forward, clean-shaven, no mask, eyes like granite. He looked me up and down, bruised, bloodied, ribs cracked, but still standing. You're Ron Jeremy? I nodded. He gave a single, sharp nod in return. Let's go get your sister. The drive was short but heavy. No one spoke. Radios crackled softly in the silence, all coded chatter I couldn't decipher. We reached the edge of town, out where the streetlights stopped and the weeds began. A lone house sat there, barely lit, small and quiet. Too quiet. That's when I knew Riley was inside. The lead man signaled, and the unit dismounted with lethal grace. Guns drawn. No wasted movement. They surrounded the building like wolves closing in. And then, gunfire. It started like a spark and became a storm. I hit the ground behind the SUV, heart pounding, pain screaming from every fracture and bruise. The shootout lasted maybe 30 seconds. Maybe a lifetime. Then, silence. Not the peaceful kind. The heavy, loaded silence that comes after death has passed through. One of the men gave me a nod. I rose, shaking, and followed the men. The door creaked open. Smoke still hung in the air. Suddenly more shots went out. One man screamed, "Got him." Then another round of shots went off. I was hiding behind another man. Shell casings littered the floor like brass breadcrumbs. And there she was, Riley, sitting in a wooden chair in the corner, her hands bound loosely with rope, her head leaning against her shoulder. At first I thought, God, she's gone. But then I saw her chest move. Shallow, slow, but alive. I stumbled toward her, past 2 crumpled bodies on the floor, Juan and Linda, blood pooling around them, more bullet holes on Juan's body than I could count. His body was beyond recognition. I didn't even look at Linda. They weren't people anymore. They were chapters closed. Riles, I whispered, falling to my knees beside her. Her eyes fluttered open, barely. Ronnie, she breathed. Her lips were pale. Blood stained the side of her sweater. I'm here, I said, undoing the ropes, gently cradling her. I'm here now. I've got you. She blinked slowly. Her fingers found mine and held tight. Even in her state, she knew me, trusted me. The man who was with me said, "We have done our job. The cops and ambulance are on the way. Good luck." Outside, the men filed out. No words. Mission complete. Their job was done. Mine had just begun. The cops arrived soon after. I didn't speak to them. The ambulance roared in. EMTs swarmed around us, lifted Riley carefully onto the stretcher. I climbed in beside her, never letting go of her hand. As we sped toward the hospital, sirens wailing in our wake, she turned her face toward me just slightly. Her voice was weak, like wind through broken glass. That kid, she whispered. Jerry. I leaned closer. What about him, baby? Her lips trembled. Help him, Ronnie. He's weak. Her eyes drifted closed. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I had to be still now. I kissed her forehead. I will. I swear to you. She slipped into unconsciousness, but her hand still gripped mine like a promise. A few minutes later, the fluorescent lights in the hospital hallway hummed like a dull funeral dirge. Riley had been in surgery for hours. I didn't count the time. I just sat there, her words still echoing in my head. Promise to help the weak and uphold the truth. That's what Grandpa wanted. She had said it again, just before being taken in the operating room. I never saw her alive again. The doctor came out after what felt like a whole lifetime. He looked like a good man. Kind eyes, strong posture, hands still shaking from the effort of trying to keep someone alive. I stood up. My legs weren't steady, but I stood. He didn't even have to speak. But he did. I'm sorry, he said softly. We did everything we could. She didn't make it. That was it. The words hit harder than any bullet I'd ever seen fired. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just final. I didn't respond. I just walked. Out the waiting room. Past the nurses. Down the long corridor. Out the hospital doors into a dark sky that cracked open with rain. The world blurred around me as I stood there. Drenched. Empty. I didn't feel the cold. I didn't feel anything. Not the water running down my face. Not the tears mixing with it. And then, quietly, a presence beside me. I didn't turn. I didn't have to. Lopez. He stood next to me in the rain like he belonged there, coat soaked. I'm sorry about your sister, he said. I still didn't look at him. You did what you could, I said hoarsely. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said something I didn't expect. You don't owe us anything anymore, he said. You don't work for us. You've got your life back. I finally turned to him. Just like that. He nodded. Just like that. Then he looked at me. Really looked. And personally, I owe you a favor. A real one. You ever need me, Ronnie, you call. I didn't thank him. I didn't smile. I just nodded once. Then he put his hand on my shoulder and said, But Ron, I'll be watching you. He vanished into the rain without another word. We buried them together. Grandpa in his full dress uniform. Riley in her favorite yellow dress, the one she always said made her look like sunshine. 2 caskets. 2 graves. The preacher said his words. I didn't invite many people. Didn't need to. It wasn't a day for the living. 3 days later, I walked into family court with a folder in my hand and a face the judge already recognized. I wasn't there to fight. I was there to adopt a boy. Jerry Tucker. Broken. Alone. Eyes that looked too old for his age. A heart filled with fear, pain, and rage. But I saw him. And maybe, in some twisted way, I saw a piece of Riley in him. I had just enough weight in the system, enough strings to pull. It went through. He was mine now. A new name. A new home. No guarantees. No magic healing. Just 2 damaged souls under one roof. But I had made a promise. To my sister. To my grandfather. To help the weak. Uphold the truth. And now I had someone small and angry depending on me to live up to it. He lay there in the bed, his small frame swallowed up by pillows and tubes and wires. Machines hummed quietly around him. A breathing tube clicked and hissed with rhythm. His face, the only part that moved, was tight with pain and something deeper. Something heavier than any kid should have to carry. I had just finished adjusting the blanket on his chest, making sure he was warm, making sure he was covered. The nurse had left us alone. Soup? I asked softly, holding a spoon in hand, though I already knew the answer. No reply. He didn't look at me at first, just stared at the ceiling. I sat in the chair beside his bed, leaned forward. I know this doesn't make sense yet. That none of this is fair. You didn't ask for this. I swallowed hard. I don't know how to fix you, Jerry. I really don't. But I'll stay. That's all I can promise right now. His gaze finally shifted. His eyes locked with mine. And then, barely audible, through clenched teeth and a soul full of fire. I hate you. 3 words. Nothing more. They hit harder than a bullet. I didn't flinch. Didn't argue. Didn't try to soften it. I just nodded once. I know, I said. I sat back, spoon still in hand, and stayed right there, beside him, because that's what Riley would have done. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.